Hello and welcome to another episode of the Young Tongues podcast. My name is Barbara Fountain and I am the founder and CEO of the Young Tongues, a peer support charity for young tongue cancer patients. And I'm excited to have another fabulous guest with me this week. Jarrod, how are you? So lovely to have you on the pod today.
Thank you.
So let's dive straight in. On the Young Tongues podcast, we like to get to know people beyond the diagnosis to start off with. So if I'd asked you, who is Jarrod? Where are you in the world? What do you do? How would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I haven't been asked that before, so see how we go. But I'm Jarrod. I live in Melbourne, Australia, actually south of Melbourne on the Mornington Peninsula, it's called. So I live down by the beach in a beautiful little beachside suburb named Mount Martha. Married to Julia now for 7 years, and two beautiful kids, 5-year-old Mac and 2-year-old Lulu, who we were lucky enough to have after all of this debacle that I've been through. So we're pretty busy, but we're very happy. Work-wise, I work in the orthopedic medical device industry as a sales rep. But it's also like a
Amazing.
bit of a clinical specialist role. So I spend my days in the operating theatre helping surgeons and nurses in there to achieve hip and knee replacements. And so I run all the technology um, and yeah, basically support, but ultimately it is a sales role as well because I work for the implant company.
That's
And I got
amazing.
into that because of a long-standing medical history, background, as I was first an emergency nurse, and then I went on to be a paramedic after that for total of those two professions of about 12 years, and then I
Oh
moved
wow.
into
So
this. So
so you're very much embedded in healthcare and clinical care. That's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah, which did
Amazing.
help through all of this
Yeah.
actually. So
Yes, yes. Well,
yeah.
talking about this, let's start at the beginning. When did you first notice something was wrong? How old were you? Where were you in your
Yep.
life at the time?
Yeah, so I was 35. It was January of 2021. And I noticed an ulcer on the side of my tongue, on the left lateral side. Um, didn't think anything of it, I was a pretty fit young guy. Um, we'd been married for a couple of years. We had Mac, who was 18 months old at the time. Actually, not even. He was just over one, but working pretty hard, pretty stressed with work. So I thought nothing of it, and I had a tooth that sort of cut in on that side, exactly where the ulcer was. So I thought, well, it's got to be that. Um, and being a young male who never had anything wrong, I didn't see a doctor. And it cleared up and it went away, so didn't think anything of it. And about 3 months later, it reappeared, same spot, but exactly where that tooth was. And then Julia said that she thought that I ground my teeth in my sleep. So I thought, well, okay, I've just caught my tongue, and I was working pretty hard at the time, so put it down to that. Anyway, time went on, probably another month, and it didn't go away, and it got worse, and the pain became more severe. And I actually had pain radiating to like my left ear, which I found bizarre. Um, and then I essentially just saw a GP because I thought I probably need to have it seen to. Not that I thought it was anything sinister. GP thought the same. Young guy, like not non-smoker, social drinker, but I was quite healthy and um, didn't think anything of it. And I have a medical background, so I thought, well, I know there's no family history, no problems. Um, and I was referred to an oral surgeon. So I went and saw the oral surgeon. he said, "Look, I'm not too sure either, but we should do a biopsy." And I said, "Yeah, sign me up. Let's do it. We can cross that off and delve into it further and try and figure out what's going on." Um, yeah, he asked me if I wanted to do the biopsy under general anaesthetic, and I thought that's a bit full on, isn't it? So I said, "No, we should be okay. We'll do it in the chair under local." He said, "You
Not
sure?" I
not
said, "Yeah."
many. Yeah, not many get that option, to be honest. So I'm surprised. Someone
No,
who offers a general. Wow.
yeah, but that got me thinking. I'm like, why is he offering something so full on for what I thought was going to be a small biopsy? Anyway, I think a couple of days later, I went back and had the biopsy in the chair, and it was horrible. Large needles into my jaw and my tongue. I just remember the tears streaming down my face, and he essentially cut like what I describe as like a pizza wedge out of the side of my tongue. And apparently that was about 7 mil, so I think that was pretty significant, but it was horrible. And yeah, I had to take a few days off work after that because of the swelling and the aftermath of all of that. And in my job, I have to talk a lot um, because I need to tell the nurse to grab this and put this together, and I need to converse with the surgeon regarding the plan and what so we're troubleshooting at any time. Um, Anyway, again, I thought nothing of it because I thought, I'm a young guy, non-smoker, no family history, nothing to worry about. And a week later, I got a call from the surgeon's room, and they said, "Can you come in?" And I said, "Well, no, I'm off to work." Um, and they said, "No, you really need to come in with your wife." And I just dropped the phone because I'll never forget that moment where I knew exactly what the situation was, and I was in complete shock. So anyway, we went into see the surgeon, and as soon as I walked in, I said, "Is this cancer?" And he said, "Yeah, it is." And I can't even quite remember that moment because I just was so overcome by emotion. And Julia was with me; she just burst into tears, and I just froze. Um, and then it was straight into I decided right then and there. I had a 1-year-old at home, a wife who wasn't working at the time. Like I was the only one bringing in any money for the family. I just thought my life was over,
Wow.
and I didn't know what to do. But I just said, well, we need to act on this right away. So
Yeah.
instead of going home, I went and had my scans straight away.
Yeah. So in terms of just because we've got global listenership and you're being in Australia, with you
Yep.
being like the single income and having a young family, is there a social security in Australia? Is there support, insurance?
Yeah, so I had health insurance, and then I had income insurance as well.
Amazing.
Um, yeah, which is really lucky. But we've got a mortgage, and um, I'm sure it's the same where you are. The cost of living is wild. So yeah, that wasn't my first and foremost concern. Obviously, like that came later. But yeah, so I had private health insurance, um, which I assumed I would go through the private health system. But we have a really good public health system here. Um, I had my scans, and I spoke to multiple specialists, and they said, "Look, you're probably better off going through the public health system here because it's a multidisciplinary team, and we all need to talk to each other. And if you go privately, you see one guy over here and another guy over there, and somehow they have to figure out a plan of attack. Um,
Yeah.
it can get a bit cumbersome, so I went with the public. Um,
Yeah. That's really similar to England actually with the NHS. Even a
okay.
lot of people who have private healthcare insurance end up going public because of the multidisciplinary team aspect. So it's really interesting how
Yeah,
that compares. And I know in the US
yeah.
it'll
So
be
it was the
totally
same.
different. So yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I'm sure. Well, my brother lives in Canada, and it's very different over there too.
absolutely. So
Um,
you've got your
yeah, so I went through the
diagnosis,
public health.
and we're now leading up, I guess, to the treatment plan and the discussions of those treatment plans. How was that news broken to you, and how were you able to process it?
Yeah, so like I said, I went through the public health system, and I met with the the team that looks after this type of cancer, and was explained every step of the way. I had a few people to sort of say, you're going to go for a second opinion, but I had done my research, and it all pointed to we need to cut it out, and we need to probably reconstruct it. Um, and then it's going to be followed by radiation plus or minus chemo. Um, so I went through that. It was 2021, and COVID was, quite rampant at that time. And Melbourne specifically was really strict with the lockdowns and the precautions. So um, it meant that all my appointments were by myself. It meant that elective surgery, which technically this was elective surgery, was delayed. And so they told me you'll probably have surgery within 6 weeks. And I just remember thinking, like, I have cancer. Like, I had a 2.5 centimeter tumor in the left side of my tongue that I had no idea about. I had found out it was stage 3. I'm thinking, why are we waiting here? But anyway, the way it worked out was that I had my surgery in 2 weeks after that, because it was categorized so high. So went into the into the public hospital. I had to have a quick what was it? An aspirate of my lymph nodes in my neck under CT, because on
Okay.
scans they had been enlarged. So they thought, well, maybe the cancer spread to my lymph nodes. And I just thought, God, knowing what I know, that we don't want the cancer in the lymph nodes, because then who knows where it's spread. Anyway, I did that. That was horrible as well, like a huge needle right in the side of your neck. Um, horrible stuff. And I didn't find out the results of that, nor did my family before my surgery. So we went in thinking, like, I don't know if it has spread or if it's localized in my tongue.
So does that mean they didn't do a neck dissection, or
No,
did
they
they
did.
still do a neck?
My
They
scars pretty
did as
good.
well. Oh yeah, look at that. That's really well
They
healed.
did, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it
just because
has.
I've not heard many people having that done before the surgery. It's usually if, then after, if something reappears. So it's interesting that they went in before the
I've,
surgery
I,
and then did the neck dissection.
yeah. Well, and you know what? I was never not having the neck dissection. So that made me think, well, why are we doing that aspiration if you're going to take them out and check them out anyway?
Yeah.
Anyway, I had a lot of
Yeah.
questions, but I just decided that to move on, because we just needed to deal with the horrible situation we were in. So I went in. My surgery was about 11 hours. I lost 50% of the left side of my tongue. I had the left neck dissection there, where they removed 29 lymph nodes. Um, I had the tracheostomy, like a lot of people get. Hated that. That was horrible. And then I had a reconstructive flap for the left side of my tongue that was removed. But they took it from my calf rather than my forearm, which a
Oh,
lot of people get.
yeah.
And they gave me the option before. They said, if you had the option, what would you take? And I said, well, maybe the calf, because I won't be looking at it so often.
Well, and also from a mobility perspective, a lot of us have mobility problems in our hands because it affects your hands and the nerve damage. So, yeah, having the option to
Yeah.
have it from your calf is really cool.
Yeah, I feel quite lucky by that. But saying that, I do have a loss of strength in that leg, and I have had some issues as a result of that. But not too bad. I've worked on it and it's gotten a bit better. But yeah, I did that, and then obviously, you have a tooth removed at the back so that they can tie in the graft down into your neck for the blood supply and all that. So yeah, that onto 3 days in ICU, where they did the 1 hourly checks on the graft in your mouth for 48 hours, which was really hard. Couldn't talk because I had the tracheostomy, fed by a nasogastric tube, which I also hated. And then, yeah, into the ward, which was pretty tough.
Yeah, just out of interest with the tracheostomy, were you prepared that you were going to have it? Did they tell you beforehand, or did they give you enough information? Because again, sometimes it's a bit of a surprise. And yeah, how did you feel about it?
So they didn't tell me about that. There was no mention of it, but me having the medical background that I did, I knew that I was getting one.
Okay.
So it was a surprise, but I had mentally prepared beforehand, knowing that the only way you can really get through that with the swelling and the rest of it is with a tracheostomy. So whether they just leave it out to protect you a little bit, I'm not too sure, but they certainly didn't mention it.
Yeah, that's it's really interesting because there's obviously a discussion we have a lot in the community on Facebook, and not everyone has a trichostomy who goes through this surgery. I think a lot of it depends on surgeon preference and also swelling, but it's interesting. I think what you say is really poignant. You mentally prepared yourself. Because of your medical background, you kind of probably thought this might be a thing, and might have seen other patients go through that previously, whereas someone who doesn't have a medical background often finds that experience really traumatizing. How did you fare with it? Were you able to stay calm? Did you kind of know that what was not, like, because a lot of people talk about the sensation. Were you able to sort of process it without panicking, I guess?
Yeah, I was actually. I think for me, the driving force with a lot of it, I didn't make it about me. I made it about the fact that I've got a pretty big support network in my friends and family. But like, I had a 1-year-old son at home and a wife. Like, I had a lot more to worry about with them than worry about myself. So really, like, don't get me wrong, it was by far the worst and hardest thing I'll ever go through. But I've always been quite headstrong in that it's just like, all right, we just have to get it done. And so let's just do it, head down, bum up, and
Yeah.
and get it done. So it was really hard because of COVID. I couldn't have any visitors, so I was in hospital for just under 2 weeks, which apparently I should have been in there for quite a bit longer, but I managed to recover quite well, and I managed to work away from the tracheostomy. I think I had that out after about 10 days.
Oh, that's great.
Which I couldn't wait to get that out. It was that was, yeah, pretty hard, I will say. But so we did that, and I thought that was the worst part, the surgery. And then I got home and I got to see Mac, and I went through the recovery. I was still nasogastric fed for a while, and then at one of my reviews a little while after, I had that removed, and I started on the pureed supplement drinks that I'm sure everyone has experienced that I never want to see again.
Yeah, protein shakes. No, thank you.
Stuff. Oh god, no, I'm good. But yeah, so we did that, and then I went through obviously regular reviews weekly, I think. And we'd always spoken about that I would have radiation, and they said you're not going to have chemo, so don't worry about it. And me, again, I think it's the medically trained people. They're very black and white with medical details, and for someone to say, "Oh, you're probably not going to have chemo," I thought, well, I have to prepare to have chemo then. So, Julia and I, Mac was one, and we had plans to have more than one child. And I'm thinking, well, the chemo is not going to help me um, in that respect. So I frantically went to the IVF clinic and, put the boys on ice. Um, I was just doing everything. And then 2 weeks later, I got the results of the testing of my tumour. And they want to have a 10 millimetre border of non-cancerous tissue when they take those margins. And unfortunately, my tumour had grown along a nerve. And they described it as like a finger growing out of the tumour. And the end of that was only 1.6 mil from the resection border.
Ooh.
And so when you want 10 mil and you've got 1.6, they're like, well, we can't guarantee that you don't have any more cancer cells floating around in your tongue. We're going to have to add chemo. And I just remember being so shattered because I thought, like, I can't catch a break. I've done so well. And then I'm just going to get another, kick while I'm down. So,
But at the same time, you did the right thing. You prepped, even though you thought you weren't going to have it. It's incredible.
Exactly. And you know what? The doctor said, if you're planning on having another child, you probably need to go to the IVF clinic now, but be prepared that your sperm count's going to be lower because of everything you've gone through. And I said, well, look at this, fellas. I've already done it. Thanks for coming.
Yay.
And they were really impressed by that. I remember they just couldn't believe that I'd thought that way. But, that was probably a blessing. But anyway, we move on. And I think it was about 6 weeks post-op I started the radiation and chemo. And there's a lot of preparation for that. The setup for the radiation, like I got the little tattoo in the middle of my chest and they create the big mesh mask so that you're millimetre perfect for the radiation when you go in there. And that mask was so tight on your face and strapped to the bed. I thought, like, I'm not claustrophobic, but if someone was, I don't know how they would do that. And I had 35 rounds of radiation, so 5 days a week for 7 weeks. And I thought, so that sounds like a lot, but you just put your faith in the medical team. And again, I was like, I've just got to keep at it. Like, let's just get it done. Let's smash it out, and get on the other side and try and like really start living. And I very much kept that mindset throughout. And I had incredible support as well throughout all of this.
How did you prepare for radiation mentally, but also how much research did you do? What sort of resources did you already know quite a lot about radiation, or were you kind of happy I'm just going with the flow and taking it as it comes?
Yeah, I was going with the flow and taking it as it comes. I think you can look into things too much, and like you said, I have a medical background, and I knew enough. But to be honest, I didn't know a lot about radiation, nor chemo. And I think I just decided to leave it because it wasn't going to change what was happening. It was just, I have to do it. So while looking into how nasty it's going to be, if you're going to go through it anyway. So it may have been a bit of self-guarding. I certainly looked up the regime and whether that was appropriate, as in the 35 doses of radiation over a 7-week period. And the literature suggested that was very common and accurate. So that was enough for me. Plus, the team that looked after me were fantastic.
Yeah. And you mentioned chemo. Did you have chemo interspersed with radiation?
Yeah, so I had weekly chemo every Tuesday. And then I did the Monday to Friday radiation the same. So on the Tuesday, I do radiation in the morning and then sit in the chair for 5 hours with cisplatin was the chemo drug that I had, which again is a very common one. The unfortunate part of that was that I got to week 6 and I lost hearing in my left ear as a side effect from the chemo. So I had to stop it. And I said, well, we can give you another one for your last dose. I said, yeah, cool. You know, I don't want to lose any more hearing, so that's fine. And I can't remember the name of the one that they gave me, but I was so sick for about 5 days after that one. That really knocked me out. But that was also very late stages of the radiation, and I'm not sure what portion of our group in Young Tongues have had the radiation. I imagine a lot, but that was hell for me. I'll go out and say that I'm pretty strong and quite resilient, and you know I can pretty much take on most things, I think. But that almost knocked me out. That one. Um, the first 2 weeks were fine, as I'm sure you're aware. Like you don't really get any effects, and after having the nasogastric tube through my after my surgery, I hated it, and I said, "Well, I'm going to set myself a challenge. I'm not having a nasogastric tube." And the team here at Peter Mac here in Melbourne that were looking after me for that side of things, um, they said, "Look, absolutely, we'll fully support you, but the pain and the blistering and the bleeding in your mouth and down your throat, like you may not be able to do that, and we need to maintain your weight." And like I'm a pretty slim guy, so I don't have a lot of weight to lose. Anyway, I lasted 2 weeks of radiation
Yeah.
before I needed a nasogastric tube. Um, High metabolism plus fighting all of the effects of the radiation and the excessive vomiting that I had. I lost 17 kilos in 3.5 weeks,
Oh my
which
God.
I didn't have to spare. And like I said before, it really did a number on me. Um, I stopped talking after about 3 weeks. And, it's hard to describe to people that just don't have any exposure to this type of thing. But imagine for like 2 months trying to just not move your tongue. It's like the most impossible thing to do. And if you do, the pain is that excruciating that you can't think. It takes over. So yeah, I just the radiation. I didn't know too much about, and it's probably a good thing. But I would not wish it on my worst enemy. And I've seen people in our community that have gotten through it all right and said, I didn't actually find it as bad as I thought. Well, I was the polar opposite. It was far worse than I could have ever comprehended. Um,
I
and
do have to say, so a
so I'm not
lot of
disappointed
people
that
in the
I said I'm
community.
not having.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I think we got crossed over there. I
That's
was
okay.
just going to say
No,
that
it's okay. Is it big delay?
that's all right. I was just going to say that basically the majority of our community goes through radiation. Is actually only a very small percentage that have no radiation, but then there's also a slightly bigger percentage of people that have radio chemo. And when we've had patient expert groups with researchers that I've sat in, I've really noticed a difference in terms of side effects and pain between the group of people who've had radiation only and the group of people who've had radiation chemo. And radiation chemo, the combination just doesn't just mean everything comes earlier, it comes more severe. So what you're describing is very much in line with those working groups that we've had and the stories that we've heard. And oh yeah, my heart goes out for you, man. I'm
Well, you know what?
in awe how you got through that.
Like I said, I've got a medical background, and it's now 3.5 years since I've finished my treatment, and I have never thought about the fact that I had chemo in conjunction with radiation being the reason for probably why it was so severe until now. So
Yeah.
thank you for that, because I feel like I've just had a bit of an answer. Because I started thinking, how am I struggling so much, and how was I, like I honestly, without bringing a negative connotation to this episode, like I thought I was going to die at one point. it was that severe, and you know, it's pretty hard to talk about. But there's one day where it was towards the later part of my treatment, and I lived an hour away from the hospital where I was having radiation. So my dad was picking me up, or friends, or something like that, and like I couldn't talk, so I'd be in the car for an hour having my radiation. My dad would wait, or my mum, or my sister, whoever would sit in the car park and wait for me. And one day, um, yeah, I had a really bad night, and I was in a really bad way. And I was self-medicating my own morphine sulfate powder through my nasogastric tube. I was only doing what they told me, but I don't know, maybe because I'm a medical person, I just didn't want to overdo it because I know of the risk of addiction and that type of thing with those type of drugs. Even though there was zero chance that I would have gotten addicted at that time, but I think I just undercut it a little bit. And over time, over weeks, the pain just really took over me without me properly realising, which sounds bizarre, but it really took over. And this one day, my dad dropped me off, and he dropped me at the front of the hospital because I couldn't take anyone in because of COVID. And he said, "Oh, do you want me to get a wheelchair?" I looked at him and I'm like, "No, like, why do I don't need a wheelchair. Like, I'm 35. Yeah. Anyway, I walked out and I collapsed in the front door of the hospital. Code blue, everything. I don't remember. But I had such a severe response to the pain that I was in that ultimately just knocked me out. So I was in hospital on super large dose morphine and ketamine infusions for 2 weeks. And it took me 2 weeks to get through my last three radiation sessions because I couldn't stop vomiting. I couldn't lay down for long enough for them to do the radiation. So
Wow.
that was probably the lowest point, and will never, ever, ever be as sick as I was then. But yeah, Julia has told me, years later that morning I told her that I didn't want to do it anymore, and I just wanted to die. And like I can't remember that, but it gets you quite emotional when you hear that, and to think what I put her and my family through at that time was, something that I'll forever think about. But you know, we come out of it as well.
Yeah. And that's the key point for anyone listening who hasn't gone through treatment yet, because I'm always quite conscious of that. Firstly, everyone has a very different experience. From all the hundreds of different stories that I've heard, I'm in the privilege of sitting in this seat and hearing all the stories. Jarrod, I can confidently say yours is on the more extreme side. You've definitely been through the mill more than others. But also more importantly, you're here now. You have made it through. So Absolutely. If you made it through, others can get through it as well. So to take hope out of that. Looking back, do you feel, with everything you know, and hindsight is always 2020 and much easier, do you feel you would have wanted to manage your pain maybe a bit more liberally with the meds earlier on? Because we all know once pain takes over, it's so difficult to control again.
Yeah, I absolutely do. Like you said, hindsight is 2020, but when you're going through it, you don't realise that you're not fully treating yourself as you should. And so I just thought, this is just what I have to deal with. When in hindsight, I should have absolutely increased the dosage. But to your point, what you said just now as well, it's not all doom and gloom. And I think that's why we're talking today, because as soon as my treatment was done, which was, the happiest day of my life, and albeit you're quite sick for a while there after, my improvement and return to life from that was light speed. And I worked very hard at it, but I cannot believe I am as well as I am right now. I never thought I would be Like, I'm the fittest I've ever been. I'm 39 now. We managed to have another child, um, you know, not long after. I didn't even have to go to the IVF clinic.
Oh, wow.
We've had a little girl. Life was good. I have like a lot of side effects ongoing from the radiation, but nothing compares to the good parts and how much I've improved. Um, I was able to go back to work after 5.5 months off. Like, I started back at work a month after my treatment, full time, when they told me I'd be off for another 6 months. My specialist said, I was one of the best recoveries they've ever seen, but I was also 35. Like, I was a young patient, and I really dedicated myself to getting back in the gym and doing it for my family. And um, it's funny because you start to eat, and I remember the first thing I ate was pumpkin because it's a pureed. It was a pureed pumpkin that Julia had made for me, and I thought it was the best thing I'd ever tasted in my entire life. But I had had no taste or eaten anything for 3 months.
Yeah.
So when I finally got something back and I ate real food, I was like, look at me go. Like, this is when we're on the other side of it, and it's all up from here. So I was wrapped after that. Yeah, and I feel like I'm still improving, recovering. Uh, there are some things that are really hard, but I'm able to live relatively normal life. Um, and like I said, when I was diagnosed, I just hadn't heard of anyone my age that had gone through it. Um, and I think when I have come out the other side, I just thought, well, if I could have spoken to someone like myself now, before my surgery, it would have done so much for me. So that's what I'm trying to do now. So I've done some work with Head and Neck Cancer Australia, which is a great, awesome
They're
foundation.
amazing.
Yeah, so Nadia Rosen and the team there. I've done some media work for them, and like a module for dentists and that sort of thing. Um, I love the work that they do. So I've done some work with them, and then I've done some sort of support work for some tongue cancer patients as well. So um, I've
Yeah.
turned a lot of negative into positive, I think.
That is amazing, and yeah, Head and Neck Cancer Australia, fantastic organisation. We are in touch with each other. They've just launched a dedicated head and neck cancer phone line, like literally just a month or so ago, which
I
is
saw that.
what an amazing thing to have. Because you do have general cancer lines, but they're not geared up for head and neck cancer, which is so specific, especially with radiation to that area. So yeah, no, big up to them. And yeah, one of the things I was interested in, you said obviously your recovery was so remarkable and so fast, but I noticed you mentioned you worked hard on it. What are the things that, if you try to think back, are the things that really helped you progress?
Yeah, good question. I think when it came to like my diet, because I couldn't swallow um, properly. I essentially had to teach myself to eat again because my anatomy had changed. And what some people that haven't gone through this or are exposed to this don't realize is that I had a graft to reconstruct my tongue, but I can't move, taste, or feel that half of my tongue. So I'm operating with one half of my mouth and my throat. So that was really tricky, but you need the mental drive that I had to keep at it was something that I was quite proud of. And again, like, I drew inspiration from having a young family, and I had a friend that said, you're lucky in that you got the kick up the arse at 35 that some people get at 80. And I loved that, and I've always remembered that. But I did that. I got back into the gym once I was allowed, as soon as I could, just to start exercising. And like I said, I'd lost, by that point, about 18 kilos, I think. Um, and I loved that, and I always remembered that. But I did that. I got back into the gym once I was allowed, as soon as I could, just to start exercising. And like I said, I'd lost, by that point, about 18 kilos, I think. Um, and I loved that. And I always remembered that. And then I threw myself into work, probably in hindsight, maybe a little bit too soon, especially full time. But again, I had a family,
Most of
and
us do. Most of us do.
yeah, yeah. I had a family, I had a mortgage, and then when you go through all of that, and I didn't talk to anyone for months, you want to get back some sort of normality as soon as you can. So I did that, and because my job is so much talking, um, I really feel like that um, elevated my speech pathology. Um, I didn't end up getting any speech pathology outside of hospital because they said ultimately you just have to keep talking because everyone's anatomy that goes through this is slightly different because they'll have a different section of their tongue removed, and I went, oh well, okay, so it's all on me. And so I went back to work and I had to talk a lot, and I remember being really tired towards the end of the day from the talking, and then the brain fog from the chemo and that type of thing. And not to mention, I had like an 18-month-old son that was keeping us up at night. Like,
Yeah.
let's throw that in the mix as well. But um, I really think all of that, I just jumped in the deep end and went for it. Um, and as soon as I started getting a couple of little wins, I started thinking, all right, this is working. This is what we can do. You just keep at it, and I always looked at myself as like a bit of an underdog mentality that no one around knows that I had cancer, and that I had this story, and I wasn't in the game of telling anybody that, but I loved being like the dark horse in that like even at the gym, like someone would say, oh, look, I'm seeing you all the time, you're doing really well, and I'm like, oh yeah, thanks. But really in my head, I'm like, yeah, you don't
Yeah.
even know what I've been through, mate. And I love that. Like I loved drawing confidence and positivity from that. So um, yeah, I think just a real drive to get better, or get past all of that and focus on what worked well and what I've been lucky with, rather than the other way around.
Other way
I
around.
think.
Now, now you're 4 years out. No, it's 2021, so it must be
3.
4 years now. Or three.
Yeah, the end of 2021 was the end of my treatment, so I'm about
Okay,
three and a bit. Yeah.
three and three and a bit. So three and a bit, and we all know that radiation is the gift that keeps on giving.
Mm.
How are you managing now to basically protect what you have? And I know you mentioned dental earlier. It's a big topic in the community, looking after your teeth and your oral health, and your general health. How is life at the moment? I guess three and a bit years out. How conscious even are you still of? It's actually not that long ago. 3 years. It's in the lifetime's a blink.
Yeah. I think about it every day. Um, I get worried about that it's going to come back every day. The dental ramifications that I've found after the radiation have been really tough. Um, haven't lost any teeth, but I dare say that's going to happen one day. Um, yeah, the radiation side effects, like the cramping of the neck and the dry mouth, um, not being able to eat without a drink. There's a lot of things that are really hard, and it can be quite embarrassing because like your tongue can cramp up when you're talking to somebody, and then you just stop talking, and they're looking at you like, what's going on? So I've learned to remedy that by trying not to be too tired and stay hydrated. I've found have been really helpful. Um, and I've just managed to mask it a little bit. But again, I think it could be worse. Like I could have lost the tip of my tongue, or the entire tongue, like some people have them, and I wouldn't be able to communicate like I can now. So it could always be worse, I think. And yeah, but I get regular dental checkups, 6 monthly at the moment, They're pretty traumatic because you've had a lot of stuff going on in your mouth now for a while. Um, I won't lie, there's been a couple of scares in the last few years where I thought that the cancer had come back. Like ulcers on the good side of my tongue that present exactly the way that my cancer did. And that turns out to be some sick joke where I just had a virus and I got an ulcer. Um, so I get really worried about that sometimes, but at the same time, the more it happens, the less sensitive I am to it. Um, so I really just try and look after myself, enjoy what we've got, um, and just stay on top of everything as I should, really. And I'm still getting followed up. I get followed up for 5 years with the public health system here. Um, I've been seeing them for 3 months every 3 months for the first 3 years, and I finally stepped it out to 6 months now.
Yay!
No,
That's always such a
yeah.
big step. It's like, wow.
I was right. Yeah, I was stoked. And they put the camera down, and again, that's all traumatic now because it's just like I don't want to do that anymore, but you have to do it. Um, so we move on and we focus on the positives and we look after ourselves as best we can. And like I said, I just try and think of how lucky I am because it could have been worse.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we'll close this out with a question I like to ask at the end, and you kind of already given me a part of the answer, but I guess reflecting back, how has this diagnosis shaped your life, and what are your hopes for the future?
It certainly has shaped my life, that's for sure. But I think probably more in a positive sense, in that I'm very clear on what's important in life, and that's family for me, um, and health. I already felt that way before, but it's just magnified now. I'm so clear on, everything's about my family, and I sometimes need to hold back a little bit on myself because I've been through a lot, and some people haven't been through that, and so I'm thinking let's do everything now, and have to be mindful that some people just are like, well, you need to pump the brakes there, but. Um, Yeah, so that was that. And then what was the second part of that question? Sorry.
And what are your hopes for the future?
Yes. My hopes for the future are just are health and continue living the way we are right now. I'm not asking for too much. I just love being a dad. I love being a husband, um, and just support Julia, Mac, and Lulu as well as I can, and show the love to everybody and stay healthy. That's all I want. That's it.
It seems so simple, yet so actually we all don't appreciate our health until it's gone.
Absolutely, absolutely. But yeah, very grateful for where I'm at, and yeah, feeling good, feeling good.
Amazing. Jarrod, thank you so much for sharing your stories with us today. Really, really appreciate it. And I'm sure we'll be back in touch at some point to have an update in a couple of years' time. And yes, so thank you also to our listeners for tuning in today. As always, if you want to come onto the podcast and share your story, or if there's any topics you want us to cover, email us on podcast@youngtonguesglobal.com, or follow us on our social media, Instagram on Young Tongues Global. And yeah, we will see you next week. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.